Hey guys, I'm here today to give just a little site guide on Baldy Towers. This is by far our most popular site here in Anchorage and one of the most consistent evening sites for flying most times a year besides the winter. So most people start their flights here at the Baldy Towers. You get to park right here at Baldy Trailhead and it's just a short 5-minute walk up to the LZ, or up to the takeoff, excuse me. The takeoff is a little flatter. Sometimes it can be tough to get off in no wind, and definitely usually don't want to try launching in tailwind as there's some brush right here at the front of the launch. You really got to drive hard sometimes to make sure that you're off in time to get over that brush, but generally it's one of our best, most manicured takeoffs, so it's pretty good. Baldy is flown in anything from kind of like a west wind to north is generally the best direction. One hazard to watch out for off a launch is launching and heading this direction to the east is going to put you behind this hill called Swiss Alps. There have been incidents over here with rotor coming off of Swiss Alps when the north wind is strong, so if it's a strong north wind, generally your best and safest bet is to take off and head left down the ridge. That's your ideal flight path anyways for most flights here at Baldy. Sometimes you can take off and just soar in front of launch here, but oftentimes you're going to be taking off and heading right down this ridge here. So I'm just going to take you through that flight path first. So, you've taken off. I generally stick to kind of the ridge crest as I fly down. There's a flag right here on this house. It can be a good wind indicator, or if you're flying somewhere else and you notice that flag kind of droop when everything else is blowing northwest or westerly, that might be a good indicator that a thermal is about to come through. If it's drawing the air downslope, this flag will hang a little lighter, and then when the thermal comes through, it'll usually pick back up. So that can be something to watch out for. That flag can give you some hints as to what the wind's doing. Oftentimes when I'm flying down and I'm not really getting any lift off a launch, I will try to fly over this little spruce grove right here. It's right in front of a couple of houses. It's some densely packed spruce trees. Spruce are a pretty good heat absorber, so you probably won't find enough to climb up there, but there's generally some little bubbles of lift that will help you arrive over Foster's with a little more height. So Foster's is the main house thermal here at Baldy Towers. It's probably the most consistent thermal in Alaska that we've found anyways, and yeah, it's kind of generated from this whole hill here heating up in the afternoon sun, and it just kind of generally seems to release in this area most of the time. Oftentimes you can kind of scratch over here to the north of Foster's and stay up, but a lot of times if you're climbing out, it's kind of right over this big house here. One thing to note is these people who live here have gotten upset in the past when pilots are flying like really close to their big front windows, so try and give the house some space. I think on the Arctic Airwalkers site it says 500 feet minimum, but yeah, you definitely just kind of want to be cognizant of their privacy and not be trying to soar right back and forth in front of their windows. So one thing to watch out for with the Foster's thermal is a lot of the times you will kind of have to follow it back up this hill here, kind of like this direction, and you'll just be climbing a little bit, sliding back the hill, climbing a little more as the thermal climbs up this hill. Oops. It is kind of a shallow angled hill, so you can get trapped. If you're back here and you're low and there's a north wind, it can be kind of hard to make it over this hill here, and it is a possibility that you wouldn't have the glide to make it over the rollover. So you do want to be careful of that if you're low and you're getting kind of drifted back over these hills here, or these houses here. You want to make sure that you have enough glide that if you fall out of the thermal or you lose it, then you can still make the glide out this direction towards the LZ, which is Harry Mack right here. But like I said, a lot of times you'll kind of climb here and then you just got to keep sliding back the hill to stay in that climb, because all those thermals are moving up the hill like this direction as the air gets sucked up. So like right here where the flag is, that's kind of the little bump on the hill where the thermal might actually release from the ground. So if you're following it up that shallow angled hill, just be aware that you need the glide angle to get out of there. If you don't get anything at Foster's, you're probably just in store for a sled ride. I generally don't hang out there long if I'm under about 1,100 feet, I think it is. 1,000 feet maybe would be calling it close. If you fly out kind of this way and try to link up this spot right here that I have marked, this area, the neighborhood, is like there's a concavity with a bunch of trees. When the afternoon / evening sun, it's kind of shining directly this way, so this can kind of be like a little thermal trap I've found. I have been able to climb out from pretty low using this flight path by like flying over that little thermal oven, and it's pretty much on your way to Harry Mack landing zone, so that's a good one to try and link up if you don't get up at Foster's. A lot of the times you can kind of do the same thing where you're just scratching back up the hill from this low spot, and you kind of scratch back up to Foster's as all the rising air moves up the hill this way. That being said, you don't want to be very low here. You want to be over it with at least a few hundred feet of elevation over the trees, because landing in this neighborhood here is pretty frowned upon, especially with Harry Mack LZ being so close right here. Earlier in the season, our preferred landing area is Fire Lake landing zone right here, just because the snow is often very deep at Harry Mack. It doesn't get shoveled, and the snow is a little easier to land in on Fire Lake. It's generally packed down. So that's kind of the main flight path from Mount Baldy Towers. One other thing I will make a note of is if you're about to launch and you see a bunch of people that have just flown over Foster's and they didn't really find anything, if it's afternoon or evening, a lot of the times, let me find my highlighter here, a lot of the times this creek bank is kind of the first thing to melt out around Baldy early in the year. If it's any time after 3 p.m., the sun is kind of generally going to be shining like this direction, so this is providing a lot of heat. It's, like I said, it's generally one of the first areas that melts out, so it's the first areas with bare ground. If you see people flying and they're not getting up at Foster's, one thing I've kind of had some luck with is flying from the takeoff and trying to make it over here to Swiss Alps. If you come over this south-facing creek bank, that's a good spot to find a thermal, especially as the wind kind of pushes things from this direction. You're getting little thermals getting pushed towards the creek, and then from this heated wall here itself, they can kind of release right along this spine that forms the north side of that creek gully there. And if you get over there and you've got enough height, then you can also get over here on the Swiss Alps, which is one of our good thermal generators as well. But yeah, so from there, if you don't find anything, your flight path is going to come down this direction. You've still got a similar glide ratio to Harry Mack LZ, but you can also kind of come out of here kind of low and still make it. Another word of caution before I sign off here is you don't want to get too low in this valley here. There can be some pretty good rotor coming off Swiss Alps. If you get too low, it's generally really sinky back there, as it's all just air tumbling over the Swiss Alps here and going down that creek. So watch out getting too low. You want to try to make that crossing with plenty of height. But if Foster's isn't working, sometimes you can find something over here along this creek bank and then climb it up Swiss Alps and get out of there. Yeah, that's it. This is the summit. Climb up there, you can top land, get thermals off of that. Head west along the plateau or north along the plateau here. Lots of options once you find your climb. Hope that helps.